Hi, welcome to the lecture of Chapter 3. Hope you survived the snow we had this week. This chapter is going to be a couple of case studies. One is a case study of kind of a waterfall approach, and the second one is the Agile. I'm not going to lecture on the Agile, listen to this video, so I'll leave that up to you to understand, to look at it and compare the two. So just keep that in mind. I'm only going to cover the waterfall because that's probably what you're going to see most of the cases. But Agile development is definitely becoming a big player, and we'll get more in depth in that as the semester rolls on. So we're going to talk about the 5 different project management processes, see how those processes integrate into the knowledge areas, at least as far as the PMBOK is concerned. And then, of course, how some of those tie into IT versus construction, something like that. So there are going to be some case studies, like I mentioned, one for project managed and one Agile. And then at the end, there's a link to some web pages that can give you several templates and things that give you more information. So a project management process is just a series of actions trying to get to a particular result. It's no different than when you're writing software. You're writing a function to perform a particular task. But in project management, we still have those same processes, and they're interrelated. And the ones that are usually used the most are initiating a project, planning it, executing it, monitoring and controlling what processes are being run. And then, of course, when the project's done, close it up, wrap it up, make sure you got a successful project. Now you look at how much time on average is being spent. Opening and closings, very small. Planning and execution are bigger. And of course, as you can tell, the more time I spent planning, the less time I spend executing. So it's definitely the more upfront you can be on knowing what you're doing, who the players are, what the process, what the issues are, definitely leads to a better, successful project. So there are, in the next few slides, I'll show you how these processes and the knowledge areas, the PMBOK knowledge areas, are interrelated. They do come into play. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I want you to take a look at the different 5 phases and each of the 10 different knowledge areas. Each of the, as a chapter 4 and on, we're going to go through each one of these knowledge areas in detail. But keep in mind, they also have, kind of like the matrix management organization, I've got, a knowledge area that you need to understand, but it does cross the different phases of a different project or a different process. So take a look at these next few slides there and just kind of get yourself acclimated to those terms. Now, developing an IT project methodology. Now, projects are unique. I've done several different types, and based on the management style, the people involved, you can start with a very rigid process. But once you've worked together a while, you may want to loosen up some of those standards because you got a trust factor. But you need to make sure you understand the process, the methodology that this project's going to follow to make sure it happens correctly. Now, there are different types of methodology, and you'll see here Prince2, Agile, RUP, Six Sigma. All are different methodology, all with different focuses based on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, the case study we're going to talk about is JWD's consulting intranet site. It's a predictive. So this is that water flow, case study. So what's going to happen in the different phases? There's at the end of the site, you'll see the website for links. And this just kind of gives you the big picture of how a major project could take place. And we'll definitely go into a whole lot more detail, as I said, a little bit later. there's usually a pre-initiation phase. It's kind of like, okay, somebody says, hey, I've got to, before the project starts, the project manager is going to meet with some key people to say, what are we trying to do? What is the scope? What's the time frame? Are there any cost constraints? Who's the sponsor? Who's calling us? Who's gonna be the project manager? So those are big cases to decide. What kind of business case? What kind of thing? How much money do we have to play with? What kind of stuff can we use? Hopefully, if you're the executive committee, you want to meet the project manager, review their skills and process and how they determine to manage a project, and then decide to say, okay, is this project too big to run itself? Or do you want to break it down into smaller pieces? All of these things are good before you kick off that project. This meeting happens the start, and then you say, okay, now let's initiate it. We've laid out at least from a high level framework, but now it's like, now I'm going to start recognizing the different phases. And what I want to do is say, hey, I want to integrate the project. I wanted to develop a charter. What is this project going to do? And who are the stakeholders? Who's got a say in this thing? I want to make sure I understand who's got a say, is this project successful or not? And you want to make sure you identify, are they internal, external? What kind of roles do they play? Are they the project manager? Do they sponsor? Some external customer may be advising you how this goes. But each one of these people have a different point of view on how this project is going to take place. Now, part of this is also says, okay, how much interest do they have and how much influence do they have? Now, you may think, well, gee, if they got an interest, their influence should be high. I can have very low interest, but I may say, because Louise Mill, she's the PR director, even though she's only advising, she's internal, she can squash this thing in a heartbeat, even though she may not understand or want to care in the details, but she's got a say in it. So you just want to make sure who's got interest. Now, this is one document you want to make sure not everybody knows about. The executive committee, the project team members don't need to know that, but you want to make sure you understand. Then there's, after the project charter, then I have a kickoff meeting. And a kickoff meeting is where I get all the stakeholders together, all the team players, and say, okay, now let's present this project, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what the schedules are, time frames, any issues that need to be resolved. Sometimes it'd be the end customer will invite to these kickoff meetings, so that, because they're the ones that are paying for it, so they want to make sure what they understand how we're going to manage the project and go on. Rough idea of what kind of agenda, what kind of objective is, what kind of action items. There may be open issues from this kickoff meeting that still need to be addressed before you can start the project. And you want to track all those action items and make sure they're documented and everybody agrees to these action items and these due times. The key here is making sure you assign that action item to somebody and hold them responsible. Having an action item and not give it to anybody means the work ain't going to get done. Now, project planning phase. In this one, the more you do this before the project starts, the better, the more successful the project is. Here, the main purpose is I'm giving a guide to how this project is going to execute. Some of the key areas you want to make sure of, how are we going to work together? Do we all understand the scope of the project? The work breakdown structure. How are we going to break down this project into smaller pieces and, schedules with all those smaller pieces? The project schedule. You may not have all the details to get a very detailed list, but you want to make sure you have a basic project schedule laid out. And one of the tools you're going to use, and we'll get more into it later, is a Gantt chart. And basically that shows the duration of an activity and what does it depend upon. So it sees what resources. So as things happen, you'll see this project plan shrink, grow, raise flags as far as issues are concerned. And of course, priority. Here's an example of what a Gantt chart looks like. We'll go in a whole lot more detail later. List of risks. What are they? Making sure everybody's aware what the risks are and which ones, the higher the ranking, the more you want to make sure you pay attention to it. Then it's executing. This usually takes the most time. And this is where project manager, now you're going to use your interpersonal skills, your leadership skills to handle the issues, the challenges, and then generate milestone reports and what's coming up. And here's just a ballpark of what are the key milestones. I'm not tracking every little thing that's going on, but I'm making sure that especially the executive committee only want to see major milestones. I don't need to see day-to-day activity, but I need to see that major events are taking place so I know that projects are relatively going on time. Best practice, it's looking at studying, other projects. It's looking at, what are successful projects and what did they find usable. Here's some examples that some people think were highly successful practices. But project monitoring, controlling. So once your project's executing, now you're going to measure the progress. We've got all the milestones broken down. We've got all the activities laid out. Now I've got to make sure that things take place. If it affects other areas as it's going through, you're notifying and keeping them informed. You're generating performance reports, status reports. If there's any changes, change requests, updates to plans, because your original plan may not hold. You may say, oh, gee, I got a 6-month project, but something happens in the middle that makes that 6-month into a 9-month. But you want to make sure that as far as contracts, performance clauses, anything like that, all of that gets documented. A change request has been made, approved, any additional funding's been added to it, so that people can understand what is going on with the project. Here's a list of some templates and things that you may want to look at, show you some. So this project, we looked at the different phases. Now, granted, we only looked at one of the case studies. I didn't look at the Agile stuff. I want you to look at that, but you'll find the details are the same, a little bit different as far as the different phases you're going to go through, but it's something you're going to want to make sure you understand. So hopefully this gives you an idea of the different phases in projects, and hopefully that helps you with this chapter. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.